We're on to the agenda for today, talking about farmers, siting policy, and battery safety. And so with that, I will hand it over initially to the middle folks here, Eric and Meredith, who operate Lazy D Farm. They've come from 3.5 hours away, you guys.
Stand behind this. All right. You'll stand behind there so you can see.
That's okay.
All right. Thank y'all very much. We're going to say that we're excited to be here all the way from Bardwell, Texas. And if you don't know where that's at, we're going to tell you a little bit about where we're at and what's happening. First, housekeeping, I forgot. On your homework, did anybody have any questions regarding any of that? All right, let's go.
Okay, well, good morning to everyone. I'm Eric DeBorde, and this is my wife, Meredith. We're from Bardwell, Texas, where we have learned how to do renewable energy through farm preservation. Though all of us here in the picture, my son here in the middle, that's Braden DeBorde. He just graduated from Texas Tech here recently. He's the he manages the Elm Branch Cemetery, Elm Branch solar vegetation. So he's doing that, and that's his fiance next to him. She's also a graduate from Texas Tech. And then our youngest one on the far side, that's Brigham DeBorde. He is 16 years old, and he's into everything. He pretty much runs everything. And so...
Oops, sorry.
Oh, it's going a little fast. Okay, so this just gives a little bit of foresight of, we just do a little bit of everything. It's about our family. It's all about our family union, what we can do for the next generation, how we can make it sustainable, and how we can keep moving forward. Farming's tough. So we have a lot of different revenue streams. Yeah, we do hay and crops and cattle, and we also sell some beef, packaged and boxed, ready to go. Eric's Supply Company is a company that I started originally to make supplements for show cattle, and we've branched out. Now it's also, we're an umbrella feed dealer, but that's also what we run the vegetation under for the solar project, and we have continued to grow that. I do a little bit of everything. I have to be very diversified. Some years in farming and ranching, it's a little tough. So I do livestock consulting. We sell show cattle. I trim feed on cattle. I do solar land consulting. Also, we sell stock trailers and horse trailers to the horse trailer company. And so we do a little bit of everything.
I have to say that I appreciate Eric. He and I met at Tarleton State University. He was one of my students, and so made a good grade in that class. And we met in 1996, and we actually started Lazy D Farm and bought our first original 216 acres, and it's just been downhill from there. I'm an ag science teacher, as well as a youth 4-H county extension agent. That's what I actually did as a job. Now I work for American Farmland Trust as an implementation specialist, and what that involves, I actually work directly with the farmers. So our mission at American Farmland Trust is to sustain the land that sustains us, as well as implementing sustainable practices, and then keep the farmers, or I'd like to say the producers, because not everybody is a farmer, keep the farmers and the producers on the farm. In 2021, we were blessed to add solar to our operation at Lazy D Farm, and then this last month, Eric has sold trailers for quite some time, and if we didn't have anything else to do, we actually own the Horse and Stock Trailer Company, so we are elite trailer dealers too. So we just say all this because it takes a lot. As a farmer and a rancher, it does take a lot.
So this gives a little bit of oversight of what our operation's like. We own about 560 acres. We lease somewhere a little over 800 acres at the moment. Our land usage, if you break it down, our cropland's only about 270 acres now. Improved pastures over 800 acres, so that's where we're running cattle outside of the panels. And then native range, we've done a little bit more of that lately, just trying to take care of our wildlife. I'm not a hunter. I don't have time to hunt, but we do worry about that too. So, but we run cattle through it, but it's also for the wildlife too. So on the Elm Branch Solar Project, we have about 830 acres inside a fence. That's where the solar array is. We manage all of that ground inside the fence. And previously, there was about 512 acres of that was cropland. It was row cropped. And so, everybody's like, well, that's where you're losing your cropland. But actually, it's got grass on it now. It doesn't erode. It's better. I think it's going in the right direction. The perimeter on the outside of the array, there's 650 plus acres outside of the array. So we still farm that, run cows on that, mostly hay operation on the outside of that.
I kind of like to show this picture because this gives you a perspective of what we do. Our operation is everything that is highlighted in the yellow. That is the actual solar farm, and I'm probably right in your way to where you can't see it's yellow is a solar farm. What we own, our original acreage is this section that's in red. That's I guess it's like a checkered red that's inside of the solar. That's our original land that we have. We should have taken the money and run, but we didn't. We decided that we're going to buy an additional 300 acres that outside of the project. So as you can see, the checked's what we own, and we are producers or we are tenant farmers, leasers of the land that's in green. This just kind of gives you an idea of the land that we work that is directly with the solar farm. I like to give some statistics about Texas. I'm a big Texas advocate. I don't say I'm an advocate, I'm an advocate for farms. So Texas leads the nation in the commodity of beef, and beef has a lot of byproducts. It's just not the meat. It's shoes that you wear to makeup to lotion to all kinds of things. So I think that's really important. The other thing, the average age of a farmer is 59 and a half, and I rolled it up to 60 because we're getting closer to that every day. And another thing I like to see that Texas does lead the nation in the number of farms and ranches, which it's over 230,000 on 125.5 million acres. Guys, we are working with a lot of land here. The other thing, 38% of the producers, basically that's their primary job. So there's a lot of really good information that's broke down about Texas. But
this is actually a slide from 2017. This is actually has panels on it now. So you can see what we were doing with it before. We were raising hay on it. It doesn't show any of the other crops we have, but it does have the hay. So now that has panels on top of it. So this goes into basically it just breaks down that how we steward the land. We want to maximize that soil coverage. We want to make sure that it's got grass on it. We want to make sure it's got living roots on it, less time that it's been plowed up and it's actually being used the right way. And then minimum disturbance, that's why we cover crops. We make sure the sheep have this to run on. And that biodiversity, we've learned that it's way smarter than trying to use a ton of herbicides, fertilizers, and all that. And so we've gotten smarter as the older we get, and we're learning.
This right here is a pretty good picture because it shows we actually go and we measure. We run the sheep on paddocks. We move them around.
Rotate.
So we're rotating them on paddocks. We're going out measuring the grass. We like to take half, leave half. So this kind of gives you an idea of really the pictures that we are doing. And the sheep, they're really interesting. Why solar? So we get this question a lot because Eric and I have plenty to do, but we want to protect the agriculture land that we are stewarding. We also want to have job security. The other thing that we want to do is we want to have land access. And that is something Eric and I in 2014, the top picture kind of shows you, it's I guess harder to see, but there's a line that goes through that's blue. In 2014, we found out that the high-speed train that is going from Dallas to Houston was going to cut our property in half. And so we really didn't want that to happen. One thing about the high-speed train, we did our research. We found out that it could affect what we do for a living. So we actually are in the beef business of putting in embryos. We raise calves. That high-speed sound could affect our conception ratio, basically the cows getting pregnant, by like 80%. And so if it's 80% of your income, the math was not really adding up. So we began to look for different ways for an income revenue source. And Eric's uncle is an environmental consultant, and he actually was putting in a bid for the city of San Antonio, putting in solar there in 2015. And so it kind of sparked our interest. And by that time, people began to ask landowners, hey, do you want to have solar on your place? And we're like, oh, no. And then we're like, hey, what about that guy that asked us about solar? Because we figured we could keep farming, we could run sheep on it, we could increase revenue, give us a little bit extra cash that we can maybe grow our operation. So for us, we began to reach out, and so that's kind of where we started our conversation. And in 2021, we started with Light Source VP.
Yeah, this is actually, you can see our headquarters is over here behind it, and this is the gate that goes into the laydown yard of the solar farm. And so, this gives some statistics of what the impact that the solar farm puts out there. And so, yeah, you got to figure it's this operation here. It's a 163 megawatt operation, so it's a clean energy. That's a big site. You got to also think the carbon footprint that it puts off. It's about 156,000 metric tons. So that's a lot. That's almost 34,000. Related to emissions and stuff that you're putting out. So that's like 34,000 fuel burning cars on a road. So think about that, as that really puts it in perspective. I tell everybody, you think that many cars, because y'all are in Austin, y'all see that many cars in a couple of hours probably. So that just gives you a little bit of perspective as to what it can really do.
I like to show this. A lot of times people are like, oh my goodness, solar's taking over everything. Well, we live in Ellis County, and Ellis County has recently been the number 10 growing county in the nation, in the U.S. right now. So that kind of puts things into perspective. Right now, our growth rate has been 3.49%, as well as from 2010, we've grown 65.74% since the year of 2010. That's a lot of growth. And this right here actually shows, so the red on the top, this is just the ECAD map, but the red on the top represents farms. The yellow represents where our solar farm is. So you can see the farms that are around in our county. What do y'all think everything else is? Urban sprawl. So that's housing developments.
What's y'all's county seat?
Waxahachie. Yeah, Waxahachie is the county seat, and Waxahachie's on the list of growing. So when you talk about solar being the enemy, I wouldn't say neither one of them are enemy, but what's taking land is not solar development. Another interesting facts, this came SEIA second, Texas ranked second in solar. We also set 10.74% of electricity that's generated in Texas goes back to the grid, and that's enough to power basically 6 million homes. I talked a minute ago, this right here is the triangle. And when we talk about the triangle, from Dallas to Houston, going, and I don't know if you can see, but right up here is where our solar farm is. And SAE, as well as the Texas Urban Planning Commission, put out some interesting information. It's really hard for y'all to see this from a distance, and I couldn't use this, but right here are the areas of solar development that are in the state of Texas. Right now, land use for solar is around 11%. In 2030, they're projecting that basically 24% is going, 2030, 24% of the land use will be needed for solar, and that is to power for electricity. But people are like, oh my goodness, we're being hit. Solar's trying to go everywhere. Well, the vast majority of 71% of Texans live, I like to say 25% of the land, but it's maybe 30%. So the vast majority of people in Texas live right directly where the solar farms are and where they're projected to be. Now, we get some questions from time to time, and I like to answer these. And is solar replacing farmland needed for food production? I'm going to say a big fat no, because we've increased our farm production. And the other thing that we've done, we have added 1,000 sheep to our operation. And the lamb and mutton production, I think it's really important in Texas, really in the U.S., because we import 73% of our lamb and mutton here. Does solar harm the habitats and replace natural habitats and processes? Well, we're in the business of creating, and habitat creation is really high priority. So if we see something on site, and you'll see some nests and stuff here in a minute, we actually isolate that and we mark it. Another question, do solar panels involve hazardous materials and dangerous processes? The panels are made of glass and steel, and I'll be honest with you, the benefits of having that electricity that goes back into the grid far outweighs. And I'll talk about it in a minute. We do have a safety plan in place, so if something were to ever happen, but the safety processes are inside of the solar. As a vegetation manager, our safety is really the person that's, I guess, has a cigarette going down the road, putting it out. That's really what we have to worry about on the outside as opposed to the inside. Do panels cause glare or reflection? Per federal regulation, they have to use anti-glare. If you're driving down the road and you've ever seen a solar farm from a distance, it really looks like a pond. It looks like a big lake, a body of water. So, does the local community benefit from solar tax abatement? Local community. We live in Ellis County. They did not give a tax abatement. We didn't ask for a tax abatement. We just knew that this was going to be a benefit for the future of our family, for the future of other agriculture students that I taught. I knew that there would be some jobs available. So the benefits, we've gotten some better road infrastructure, and as much as Ellis County is growing, they need the tax revenue. So last question, do landowners and tenant farmers lose their right to farm? That is something I think that we're doing better, but I'll be honest with you, Eric and I, when we very first signed our contract, we farmed on the outside, but we were not the vegetation managers on the inside. We did run sheep through relationships. We've actually had that opportunity to go ahead and, be a farmer on the inside as well. And we run sheep, that's how we farm. I really wanted to talk a little bit from field to floor. I've had the blessed opportunity to go talk and speak to a lot of different organizations, but when it comes to Senate Bill 819, I'm going to harp on that one. For me, I'm going to tell you from the perspective of a landowner and a farmer, it takes many industries, ag, solar, wind, working together to support one another. And I think that balance is the biggest thing. Balance, but then not over-regulating one industry over the other. I think that that's been the biggest thing. But I have my own personal views, but real progress comes when we listen to the communities, focusing on what actually does work on the ground, exploring solutions, but don't over-regulate. And that's kind of where I think that we're with. I think David may talk about some of that. Eric's going to talk a few minutes about contracts.
Yeah, so that's that's the number one question I get all the time as I travel around and I talk to people. That's the first thing. What kind of money can I make? What kind of contract? Most of it, they're worried about how long is my land going to be tied up and who's going to finish this out. So most of them are like a 25-year option on those contracts for the base, and then they have like a 5 to 10-year options at the end. It depends on what you like, but they're very open to that. The price per acre is the way most contracts are wrote up these days. We are starting to see a few more landowner shares, so it follows more like what you'd see in the oil and gas industry. We're seeing more and more of that. That was not seen at all when we did ours. Just nobody did that. They just wanted to rent it out per acre. And the decommissioning, that's also another one. I tell everybody when you're going to do that, you need to make sure you read through all that, get an attorney to look at it. But we have a very good decommissioning set up on our site to where it will go back into that state once the contracts are all over.
Two really good resources. So like I said, I work for American Farmland Trust. We jokingly in my office, we've been in the space of Texas. We have a smart solar division. I do consult with them, but I'm basically their test dummy on the Texas Smart Division side because, it's new to Texas. And so I can give some insider farmer perspective, but I also can give them some details. So they have best practices in place. In October, we are doing an Educate the Educator event, a Southern SARE grant that American Farmland is hosting. And we're just going to be educating AgriLife, USDA, any type of individual that is the service providers. We're doing that. American Solar Grazers came into play. That's another organization. They have basically contracts, but they have a lot of best practices. They're 501(c), so they're not going to take a political side. But the one thing that they will do, that they have a lot of data that they've gathered. So that's one good thing that we feel like needed. Habitat, guys, I'm so excited for what we've created. Mr. Moore, you asked a question about, butterfly. We have a bobwhite quail as well as a butterfly habitat that we've created on the new properties that we've gotten. We've actually been awarded incentive from Miller Coors and Tarrant Regional Water District for our conservation efforts. And I want to say, so when we took on the vegetation contract in 2025, making sure what we do on the outside and the inside is really important. We run basically 1,000 head of sheep. They go from paddock to paddock, and we want to make sure that that land is there. One thing that we focus on, I will say that we do have a safety plan. We have to have safety in place because of the contract with Eric Supply Company. So that's who we run that through. We actually have to make sure that we have a safety plan. There's a fire contingency plan. If there's a plan for safety, we have to have that in place. But our efforts support mainly habitat ecosystem development. This is a Dick Sissel. In the side of the panel, you can see that they found a place. It's pretty quiet, and so they really like that. The other thing that we do is we want to make sure that the ground is covered, so we pay attention. That grass that is under the solar panel, it actually grows very well, and that has a lot to do with the soil temperature. I took these pictures last year in the month of July. Underneath the panel, the temperature was 80 degrees, and outside it was like 101, but outside it was 96.2 degrees, and this was the ground temperature, that's what I'm checking. So as you can see, habitats grow very well underneath the solar, and we do use mowing. We don't use a lot of mow, but the grass where we live, it's 48 to 52 inches of rain, so there is a little bit of mowing that takes place. In this last picture, we do strip mowing. So the grass, there are regulations for fire mitigation that we cannot have, and just to keep the panel safe, we do not like for that to be over 18 inches. So we'll do a strip mow and then leave the inside strip for habitat as well as for grazing. So those are things that are really, really important.
This is some pictures from 2025, and this is outside of the panels. It just shows kind of how we correlate what's going on inside to what's outside. But this is where we had some crops planted, some cover crops, and then we do some baleage. And we, like I say, we just try to leave that ground covered up as much as we can. So it doesn't matter what time of year it is, we try to keep it covered. This is actually a project we have going on right now. We've done some, gotten rid of some woody encroachment. This is a partnership that we're doing with the EQIP program through NRCS, and that's a government program that, and so what we're doing is we got rid of some of that. We're trying to fix some erosion issues and trying to increase the habitats on the outside, not just for the cattle, but for wildlife too. So trying to give a water source and better grasses, and this will all be in grass. Where the tractors are running, that'll have grass on it next year.
I'm trying to make him hurry up because I got a video that we got to play at the end. Right here, when we added sheep to our location, all we had to do was take what was existing and add on 1 day's worth of pens. So when we bring the sheep in, we work them here, get them adjusted, and then we move them on. The benefits, we didn't talk a lot about our family, but Eric, guys, he's been featured in a lot of different things because he does a lot of different unique things. He's a hoof trimmer. If you look up hoof trimmer on Jobs That Bite, you'll be able to see Eric a long time ago. He was in a movie, so our boys have been blessed to stay in this, and the rewards, it's tiring. I mean, I'll be honest with you, we get up every morning at 5 o'clock and sometimes don't go to bed at 10, and we're like, what are we thinking? But guys, it's the best, most rewarding because we know that we're putting food on somebody else's table. Let me see.
I am Raina DeBorde, and I am not your typical 14-year-old. I am the next generation farmer and rancher here at Lakeview Farm. Every day is a work day. I have been given the gift of the soul, and it's my job to take care of it for the next generation. This way of life does require commitment, but rewards of seeing your work grow to life can come or go in one season. I learned a lot here on this land. There's nothing lazy on Lakeview Farm. There are many things that are beyond your control. My job is to be a good steward of what God has given me.
Each day brings new challenges and changes to the agriculture world. We see this as opportunity to make decisions to embrace technology and new ways to steward this rich agriculture land. I didn't envision our land being the future of the energy revolution, but we pair environmental and conservation to generate positive outcomes while helping the ecosystems we manage thrive. I'm excited to see our boys manage this great resource they've been given. Lazy D Farm, the future is for my boys and for the next generation.
That's it. Thank y'all. There is nothing lazy on Lazy D Farm.
Nothing at all.
I got a question.
Oh, yes.
So, what do you use for electricity? Do you use solar or use natural gas or something?
Oh, I'm kind of glad you asked that. We actually do have solar on our barn. We actually have Navarre County Electric Co-op, and they don't buy back the energy. So we basically have set our system up for 75%. This is large scale utility, and it directly goes into, a large line. So you can't just pull from that line. Well, we didn't research that, so.
We didn't cover that, but I think there is some openings there that you could do that now. But yeah, we didn't do that at the time.
But we do have a barn that we use for putting some of our equipment under.
It's an
And it
equipment
has
shed, and it's
equipment
covered
shed,
with solar
and it's solar panels, and it helps our electric bill. So, and Eric, he won't say this, but he by trade is an electrician. He's a college graduate, but he's an electrician. So
That's one of the other hats I have. Yeah.
oh yes.
Yeah.
Was your existing grid interconnection good enough, or did you have to upgrade that?
No, it's so the interconnection that we have, it's set for the megawatts that it's producing. So the question that we have a lot is, okay, so if you went into battery storage or you started doing something extra on that, yeah. So our substation is designed to withstand what we have there. It would have to be changed and increased to take on any more panels if that was the case. But the way it was all perfectly designed by Encore and through the solar company to make sure that there's no extra waste in there. So it's just designed for that. You would have to change.
You mentioned that for your project specific, you all didn't ask for any tax abatements. Is that the norm, or it's just particular to your case?
I think that they ask, but
Yeah.
Ellis County did not give it. So Lightsource BP is our owner. They have a project in Navarre County. They have one in Ellis County. I work in Navarre County, and they did give them tax abatement there. But there's a lot more projects. They have a coin mining facility that's over there as well.
But we kind of knew just from talking with the mayor and talking with other people in the town that they were not going to help out.
Yeah.
Now, they'll help out if you want to build homes there, and they'll give a tax abatement to the home builders that build and tract homes. But they did not have any interest in that, and Lightsource just didn't have any resistance. They're like, we have to have it, so whatever it costs, we're just going to do it. So they just didn't take the break, and they just went ahead and went on.
We're probably the closest one south of the DFW. We're 45 minutes south of Dallas.
We're
So
down
yeah.
45. We're the closest to Dallas.
Did y'all have any actual expense in the production of this solar array? Did they cover all the costs, the interconnect, and everything?
Yeah, they cover everything. I think they wish they would listen to us a little more on a few of the things dealing with the soil and the groundwater and all that. And now they do. But at that time, I mean, our site's getting old. It's only 5 years old, but it's literally, I mean, there's so much changes have changed in it now. They're realizing, some of the stuff the USDA had already done on the site would have been better to pay attention to. So it didn't cost us anything.
we didn't have any money up front, but I'll have to say some of the erosion mitigation has cost us on the
Yeah.
backside. So
Your farm seems like really up to date as far as technology, whatever is scientifically sound. So did you all have a clause in your contract or something like that, that they would provide you with this information? Or how did you all basically learn because this is a lot of different projects you're doing. So I'm from the policy point of view, because we are always looking for the policy angle. What kind of policy helped you figure out all these things, or was it part of a contract that?
I will have to say, so with my work with American Farmland Trust, Texas does not have a lot of policy, and probably makes it more of a, I wouldn't say a hot spot, but a desirable area for a lot of solar companies to come. So as far as our knowledge, we actually went to a friend that actually does solar that offered us the option of shares, but the other landowners, there's 7 landowners in our project, didn't want to do that. And so we got his legal advice from the oil and gas industry side, as well as his experience, and kind of paired that together. Now, when you talk about policy, United States Department of Agriculture, so agriculture, your farm bill that you have, that everybody talks about the farm bill, so we are not governed by anything but farm incentives, help, resources come through insurance, through the farm bill, through those sort of things. And so since there was not as much, so the Clean Water Act, NEFA, is, you know, USDA actually mandates and kind of is the holder of a lot of that stuff. There needs to be some policy changes. I don't want to talk about really over-regulating, but I think that there are some things that we've learned. But as far as policy, Texas just doesn't really have a whole lot. I mean, your NEFA is self-certification. So the companies that put it in, they self-certify.
We had to steal a lot of information off the oil and gas. We borrowed the information off the oil and gas industry.
Our attorneys.
And we had to deal with an attorney that is real tight in that world, because there was just nothing there for the solar, and we could see where it would get really western. And so we just decided we better borrow some other information from another group to help us figure it out, because we could see the writing on the wall that this is going to get really crazy. Even though we thought it was a great idea, but we could see where there's some holes in it.
We have an attorney. We also have a engineer, and we also have an accountant that are landowners in this. So we had a lot of, and they all deal with industry, and they all deal with farming as well. Not all of them. We're probably one of 3 producers that actually farm on the location. So there's 3 of us that we do our farming on site, but we're the only ones that farm full time of the landowners that are there.
You said you had some comments about Senate Bill 819, but you haven't said anything about it yet.
I just said that I think that there needs to be a balance. Over-regulation, I think, there does need to be some rules and some regulations put in there, but I think that making sure that, I think that we need to come together and have some better conversations before we move forward with that. And I'll be honest with you, Eric and I represent the farmer on the ground. Like, we are at home doing the work. We get up every day, we go to feed, we go to jobs outside. We're not even the 38% that agriculture is what we do for a living. All of our jobs have to do with agriculture, but we're not farming on the place because we honestly could not afford to. And so when I say that, those conversations need to be had. Overregulating one for the other, I think that there's got to be balance, and I'm okay with, there needs to be some regulation in place. Yeah. Absolutely, we feel like that.
Thank you.
What would you say to other landowners that may be on the fence about incorporating solar into into their land? What are the pros? What are the cons?
Boy, that's a really good question. So American Farmland Trust went and they surveyed 151 individuals, people that were interested, and of those, 41% did their own research. Not one of them went to USDA, not one of them, I think it was like 37 or 38% went to an attorney. Most people get their information on their own research, and I'm telling you, the best place, if somebody had an idea or they're even remotely interested, they need to talk to somebody that actually is doing what they want to do. Eric and I talk to individuals, a lot. Eric consults, but I talk all day long. I work for American Farmland, and we're trying to put out some best practices. American Solar Grazer Association, they do have a lot of great resources, but if you want to start, I say you go find a facility. I talk to people all the time, And a lot of times I give that information, but do your research. Find a resource.
So I had a question, and I wondered if you could talk about the economics a little bit more. Like, you expect to make a certain amount if you're, doing some kind of agricultural production on an acre of land, and how solar compares to that. Is it comparable? Like, are there attributes of the solar that make it more or less attractive or fit really well with a farming operation?
Talk about our sunflower crop.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing is it's consistent. The solar is consistent. So it's like it's our sunflower crop. I mean, if you drive by our place, if it's at 6 or 7 in the morning, panels are all one way, and you come by at noon, they're flat, and you come by in the evening, they're all looking west.
It rotates like a sunflower.
So
that's what
they're
we call
watching
it.
the sun all day long. And so, but the big thing is, and the thing that we thought the sustainability to help us was the fact that we could get paid all the time. We don't always get paid on our commodities. I mean, we've raised corn and milo and all that in the past. Our margins are so tight on that. If you have just a bad hailstorm like we did yesterday, or if you have your margin went from, okay, I'm going to make $10 an acre this year, to where I just lost $30 an acre. So, environment, just what the environment can handle and throw at you. You just got to be ready for it. And so we just needed something that was a little more consistent. And we knew that the sheep were coming, and we knew that there was going to be availability for that. We didn't know how fast it was coming, but we thought, well, if we can get in on that track, we can still raise lamb and sell that. And so we have that revenue source too. Plus we have a consistent revenue of the solar panels. And so we thought, well, that would help us operate the way we like to operate. And I'm not saying we're over the top, but it takes a lot to operate. We like to show cattle. We like to go and do things, and we travel a lot with our cattle and our kids, and we're trying to build kids that understand that what we do and how much work it takes. And so we spend a lot of time and effort in that. But yeah, that's the margins where we really got into it, is that we can guarantee that we could get that money on the solar where we couldn't on the other.
And I'll be
still
honest
on
with
our land.
I'll be honest with you too, though. A lot of the solar, we don't put it back into our operating budget. We put it into infrastructure, and we put it, so we're buying a piece of property with that money, and then we have some additional funds, and we actually put that in on our infrastructure. So we're not taking the money and going on a trip to Hawaii.
No.
We wouldn't have time to go to
No, we don't have
Hawaii,
time.
but Eric has been. We've been on an ag tour, so
Yeah.
if it involves agriculture, you're speaking his language. So that's one thing that we enjoy it. But our hope is that maybe one person that I come in contact will say, oh my goodness, I think I want to do that, because like I say, the majority of farmers are older. It used to be, higher. It was like 64, 65. Now our generation is coming up where Eric and I are 55. We're getting to be the average age of a farmer now. And so we want to make sure 39% of women, when they were talking about the statistics in Texas, 39% of farmers are women. So we think that agriculture is important, and we think that renewables as well as agriculture pair well together. So that was a lot. I know we're a lot, but
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's a hard act to follow. A great story, and great to hear what it's like to actually have a project on your land. I'm going to do 3 basic things, or 3 points I want to make. The first point is I want to emphasize the importance of community choice. The second point I want to emphasize is the importance of a level playing field. And the third point I want to emphasize is the importance of not kind of contributing to the redundancy and coordination problems with regard to regulation of industry in the state. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this draft bill, SB 819, as an example. And I'm going to just take specific provisions from that legislation to illustrate each of these 3 points. So the first point with regard to community choice, one of the provisions of 819 basically forecloses tax abatements for renewable projects. And so we were just talking about that in the last presentation. And the point I want to make is, first of all, that it used to be the case that project developers were able to negotiate tax abatements for both school districts and for the counties. No longer can they negotiate over school districts. Now this would foreclose negotiating tax abatements for counties as well. And the point I want to emphasize here is that one of the attributes of solar projects, we also see this with data centers, is the principal benefit associated with them is the taxes to the local community. And you might assume that, well, then of course you don't want to permit a tax abatement because you want to ensure that the local community gets as much tax revenue as possible. The challenge is in attracting these types of projects to local communities, the tax benefits to the average community member aren't necessarily all that salient or all that visible. And so by affording flexibility for communities to negotiate tax abatements or a payment in lieu of taxes, what that actually does is it can give the community greater flexibility to determine where the funds associated with a project go. It's not strictly dictated by the terms of whatever the county tax rate is, whatever goes into the school district. And so it's really about county choice by allowing these types of negotiations between local communities and developers. And it can actually enhance the ability of the local community to negotiate for something that they value and generate a win-win situation that also makes the benefits associated with renewable development more tangible to the community as a whole. So beyond the landowners who obviously have direct benefits associated with the lease rates that they get from a project. So that's the first point. The second point is this statute also imposes pretty strict setback requirements, both for solar projects and for wind projects. The wind project setback of 3,000 feet, more than half a mile, is actually really, really significant and will restrict a lot of development in many parts of the state. We have an enormous amount of major industrial development in the state, especially along the Gulf Coast. And there are massive petrochemical facilities that are literally on the fence line of communities. There are no setback requirements whatsoever. And yet for solar projects, for battery projects, for wind projects, this legislation, in this case it would be for solar projects and wind projects, sets strict setback requirements for a type of development that has relatively minimal impacts relative to major industrial facilities. I also think they're arbitrary. What we would want, it sort of goes back to community choice. Surrounding landowners, local communities, they want to have the opportunity to have these projects, and they want to have the flexibility to negotiate over the terms and the zoning around the development of a particular project. This seems like an arbitrary distinction that doesn't establish or maintain a level playing field between different types of development in the state. And it could really have a very significant impact on where projects can occur and the amount of development that can occur in Texas when we are in great need of new generation in the state. There's increased demand from data centers. There's increased demand even within major urban areas for a whole variety of reasons. The third point I want to make is, so I've talked about the fact that we want community choice. I've talked about that we want a level playing field for regulation. The third point is, part of what this legislation does is it imposes this requirement for an environmental review, and it imposes requirements for wildlife monitoring, adaptive management, and permitting requirements. And yes? Sure. So the two kind of key components I want to focus on here are environmental reviews. So basically technical reviews of the environmental impacts associated with projects, and permitting requirements with regard to protecting wildlife. I'm an environmental lawyer. You would think I would want more environmental protections, more environmental procedures. But the catch here is that, let me just go, oh, wrong way, is that both of these provisions overlap with existing federal statutes, and they actually go beyond state level regulations. In Texas, there are no regulations around endangered species other than if you're directly selling them or you're directly harming them. So a typical project wouldn't have to get any kind of state level permit with regard to endangered species. But more importantly, we have the Endangered Species Act, which protects endangered species, and we have the National Environmental Policy Act that requires environmental reviews for projects that have significant environmental impacts. We also have the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act that protects bald and golden eagles, and the Migratory Bird Treaty Act at the federal level.
What triggers those acts on these projects, though?
So the National Environmental Policy Act, it's true, it requires some kind of federal nexus to trigger an environmental review in that case. And so not all projects are going to be covered by that. The Endangered Species Act, basically you have to have or be impacting the endangered species where a project is going to be sited. But the major impacts associated with wind and solar projects often involve species that have really, really large ranges. And for a typical project, excuse me, a project developer is essentially always going to do a consultation with the Fish and Wildlife Service. And so there are really robust protections already under the Endangered Species Act. So you have the federal law, you now are going to have a state law, and there's already an earlier statute that actually was passed in Texas that's more limited than the SB 819. And so you're going to have these parallel processes that have to be coordinated. And so you have an additional level of regulation, and you also have to coordinate between the state and federal levels. Yeah.
When you mentioned the NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, you said you have to have a federal nexus. What do you mean by that? Does that mean that it only occurs if it's interstate, like crossing state lines, or what does that mean?
No, there are three basic triggers that can establish a federal nexus: a federal permit, federal land, or federal money. Okay. So that's the third point. If you're considering state level regulation, ideally we, especially in Texas, are allergic to overregulation. These are additional regulations beyond what would be required for most utility scale, most industrial scale development in the state. And then they're duplicative of federal regulatory schemes. And so there's just not a good justification for them. At the very least, what you would like is, if you're going to impose state level regulations, that they're complementing federal regulatory programs. And in this case, they're essentially duplicating them. And so again, thinking about these two tiers of regulation, we should be thinking about that when we're considering different legislative options for the state. So I'll just conclude again. We want to make sure that communities have choice. We want to make sure that we have a level playing field. And especially in Texas, we do not want duplicative regulation that actually makes the coordination challenges associated with renewable development even more challenging. And I'm going to stop there.
Other questions? That was super clear. Last, do you have anything else that I? No. Okay. Well, perfect. Last week we meant to talk about battery safety, and our developer has returned very kindly to discuss the topic. I'll just hand it over to you.
Sure.
This is Raina, if you remember.
Thank you. Sorry I'm late. Hi, everyone. Good to see you again. I don't know how much you've touched on battery safety. None at all. Okay, so it's going to be a hot topic for this session. Battery storage and battery safety is quite different from a technological standpoint. And we don't technically consider battery storage renewable, so it gets clumped in often and does support renewable generation, but it is very different. It isn't very different, however, than electric vehicles and power walls. So keep that in mind as we go through these slides on siting battery storage from a fire safety perspective. Like I said, it's going to be a very hot topic for this session. It was last session. And since the last session, there's been quite a bit, and I didn't put slides together for how much has been installed and operating, but it's a lot. So you, like I said last time, go to ERCOT. Very user-friendly. Am I going the wrong way? Okay. So one of the things we do when we site battery storage is, I'll just go over quickly how we identify places to put battery energy storage. A lot of it's based on nodal data from existing substations. And it also depends on the range. So the range of battery energy storage projects is kind of like wind and solar, not wind so much because you really can't do super small scale wind. If you do, it doesn't rise to this level for us to talk about it, but battery storage kind of has like a, 5-10 megawatts is the distributed generation I talked about last week. So it doesn't go on the transmission grid, it goes on the distributed grid. So the smaller projects, I don't know if any of you have seen any drive. If you go pretty much, I'm sure you guys have, and you probably have. Do you have battery storage on your place? No. Have people talk to you about it? A little bit, yeah. I'm surprised. I'm always surprised that the solar projects haven't done it themselves yet. I think it's coming, but I've thought that for 10 years, so it's still coming. So you'll see kind of maybe 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acre next to battery storage projects, kind of going from Austin any which way, you'll see these. And they look like shipping containers. A lot of them are just kind of surrounded with chain link fence, similar to a substation. There are projects, and we do our projects where we build a wall that looks better, and if it's anywhere that people care about how it looks, we'll do trees and things like that around it as well. But very quickly, when we propose projects in communities, we meet with the fire chief there, and really getting input and buy-in from the community at the start is very important. And so that's where you guys are going to run into questions in this next session of where is proper siting and setbacks and things like that. And it's all based around this fire risk. So we have basic fire codes that these projects abide by, and then we have site-specific hazard mitigation analysis that we do. And that's one thing with these, it is site-specific. So depending on if you're in the middle of nowhere, or these are developed in the middle of Houston, there's lots of projects that are very urban. So that's a lot to do with it. Chemistry assessment, as most of you know, the batteries are lithium-ion batteries. We've come a long way in battery safety. So I don't know how many of you have followed kind of fires that have happened, but there hasn't been fires in Texas. So we don't have that, and we're proud of that and happy about that. There have been fires in California that maybe you've heard about. That was, those are, it's been a while, and that was a different technology. With ours, with a lot of the battery storage safety standards now for fire, they have contained mechanisms. So if a fire starts internally, they'll know right away. And lots of times they'll vent up and they'll burn out. So one of the biggest things about battery fires is you do not, and like car battery, EV battery fires is you don't use water. So we do have hydrants near our facilities for, in case something gets outside of the container and there's water to kind of do that. But these projects are on concrete pads or gravel, and they're fenced, so there's not like lush, there's not a lot of anything around, similar to a substation. So we do put together emergency response plans for every project. Access road. Yep. Hi.
Hey, so we're talking about best practices and how you and your team operate.
Yeah.
Where are we at on state regulatory side of things or state best practices and policies? Because as with anything, good actors, bad actors, etc.
Yeah.
These are great. Having the hydrants, etc., self-containment systems. Where are we at on the state regulation side, and where do you think we might need to go for best practices in industry safety?
It's a great question, and I think it was what we missed last week, right? They were addressing it. Like I said, it's going to be a big subject. Oklahoma is just adopting kind of standards for Oklahoma for, citing specific in relativity to schools and houses, and there's some common sense mistakes that have been made by developers that have given this industry and this specific technology a pretty tough go in some of these communities. So it's common sense not to cite them super close to homes. Like I said, they are adjacent usually to substations, so it kind of is the same. It's an industrial project.
So with the hydrants that y'all have and the specialized suppression, etc., is there any specialized equipment needed for that, or just your standard pump truck or something?
Yeah, there's no specialized equipment needed. We do work with different fire safety. Part of our plan is training. So we always come in and do training, and that stems from the battery manufacturer and the training that we have around them, because firefighters want to use water. I mean, that's just common sense, and they have. And you've seen probably some of the videos from the EV fires, and that has not worked out well. So it really is training and education. And then we also have a support person that will go on site if there is a fire, because a lot of these rural communities are all volunteer firefighters, and so we do training, and we do agreements with them where if there is a fire and they have some damage to anything to do with their fire department, that we'll make an agreement with them. And obviously insurance is a big part of fires. But again, we've had a huge installation of these projects in Texas, and they're operating, they're managing the volatility in the grid, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Yes?
How common is it for fire departments to do training on relevant to battery storage facilities? Is that the norm? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know the exact answer. That would be a good kind of survey to do for the folks that do that. But I think there's not battery storage projects that don't directly deal with the fire department. It just is such a big part of having any type of new power plant. So I think it's very, very common. Again, there might be projects that are so rural they don't have to deal with the fire departments. But I know for me and the developers that I know, it's very much the first thing that you do is talk to the local mayor and fire department and city council and county, all those folks, just because it's, you're going into a community with a project. So it's kind of the development 101.
And the trainings, is that specifically in regulation or policy, or is that just best practice for the
It's
fire department?
specific to the technology. So I haven't reviewed a lot of training manuals from other folks, but like for our technology, the batteries that we use, like I said, we get the training manual and all the safety information. I have a slide on it actually. Oh my gosh, I keep going the wrong way, sorry. So this is it's 2 substations, and then this is our proposed project. And like I said, it's about an acre, it's 10 megawatts right there. And this is what we do this is a different project, but this is what we propose. So it looks better than a substation, kind of just, even though it's right next to the power lines, still it's in, people are going to be driving by, and it's safety. And that's another fire safety barrier as well. So if a fire happens in a container, it will burn out. It will vent up, like I said. It will burn out. The other containers will shut down. And so we don't see fires spread from container to container. And then, but this concrete barrier obviously is another fire. But a lot of our design and work is, access for the fire department in and out and around the facilities. So I don't know how much you guys know about BESS or want to know about BESS, but you have access to these slides, so you can kind of go into it. But basically, battery storage charges during the day when there's excess electricity available, and then it discharges during high demand. When that's been in the morning lately in ERCOT, but also the evening. So it really helps stabilize the grid, and it's just a awesome asset to be there when things get tight, whether it's hot or cold. Any disruption in the weather that causes electricity demand to spike, it can react faster than a generator. It's just very, very fast. It's there. It's going to help bring our prices down for electricity, because it's just helping manage all the assets in the grid like nothing else can. And so we're seeing benefits already, and the market has already stabilized quite a bit from when, a couple years ago, before we had virtually not very much battery storage at all. Yeah, and again, this is a fuel mix, so and these are all available on ERCOT's website. Have the solar and just when it is. So this is just more information. This is the technology that we use, and a little bit more in depth on. It has integrated fire protection. Again, internally, it can sense a fire immediately, and it reacts immediately. This is the ventilation design from the top I was talking about. It vents up. Yeah, lots of monitoring, lots of safety equipment. And again, you can see it just looks like a Connex storage container. So I think I've said most of this. It has the internal fire suppression. We don't see these fires happening. You don't see a lot of garages catching on fire, right? And from having power walls, which are battery storage, and even EVs, it's basically the same technology. So I think I've said all this. We do have the evacuation precaution. If there is a fire, we have people within a certain feet evacuate, but again, that's a site-specific thing. We have fire staging area 100 feet away, have a fire control center, so that's all part of the development before we construct the project. Community benefits is a lot of what I think you guys should take this slide into the session, because you'll definitely be asked a lot of questions about why is battery storage necessary and why is it good. It really does improve grid reliability, brings the cost down, helps lower the need for new transmission lines. So, and it doesn't use water to function, and it doesn't release pollution. So like last week, that's our favorite thing about renewable energy is it's just safer for the environment and better. And so we have all these standards that we abide by. This is another thing that going into the session, you're going to see a lot on. So I was supposed to wrap up. So I wrapped up, but happy to answer any questions that you have, and yeah, and available throughout the session too, if I can be helpful. Yes.
I have two questions. One is easier than the other. Like, in a solar farm, how many battery storage units could be there?
So none within the solar project. The solar project will be its own own fenced, secure, but there are often battery storage projects adjacent because it can charge the batteries from the solar. That really is what works well. So that's all dependent on the capacity of the transmission lines nearby and the substation and the land availability, kind of all the development tasks. So they're not paired together often right now. They're built kind of separately, but we do see that more and more now where I think they will be.
Okay, and my other question is a little policy related. You mentioned additional, what I gathered you were saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, some additional fire station or aside from training on the ground to tackle a potential fire. Does that require a policy or is that local governance?
No, I think what you're referring to is our staging area. If there is a fire, we do have a plan to stage the fire trucks and the fire to sit and observe the fire. And it's a burnout scenario, so you don't do anything, but they have to be close in case there's worst case scenario, a thermal runaway event, or it's high winds and there's, it's super dry. And I mean, there is worst case with any fire of anything. So I think that's what you're referring to. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a couple of closing thoughts as we wrap up. See Dr. Adelman's awesome image up there, among others. If you have further questions on specific topics as we go through the sessions, please feel free to reach out to them or let us know, and we can reach out to them. This program is specifically for the purpose of answering your questions and all of these things.